We discuss a one-of-a-kind dreadnought, the Bellator Super Star Destroyer, on today's Star Wars Legends lore video. When compared to other Super Star Destroyers of its era, the Bellator was unique. It was less of a super heavy damage sponge like the Executor or Assertor, and instead a versatile, fast dreadnought. Today we'll examine both the in-universe and real-world information surrounding the ship. Let's first start with in-universe. The Bellator was a 7-kilometer long dreadnought used most prominently by the Galactic Empire. It most notably saw action as a part of the Empire's Deep Core Defense Fleet prior to and during Operation Shadow Hand. It was a divergent ship of the Mandator line. As a bit of history, the Mandator 1 was created by Kuat for sector defense and was the first standardized dreadnought class in galactic history. A second ship type, the Mandator 2, was created with more impressive armor and weaponry. Both vessel types, which were traditional slug-it-out dreadnoughts, served the Republic during the Clone Wars. Later, the Empire commissioned the Mandator 3, a 12-kilometer long dreadnought which improved on the key aspects of the Mandator 2. Cousin to that, and still within the Mandator line, was the Bellator, which traded pure firepower for flexibility and speed. The Bellator was, undoubtedly, pound for pound, less well armed and armored than the standard Super Star Destroyer. However, its loadout, including its 14 engines, actually gave it the ability to more effectively respond to threats, with faster sublight speeds and likely a faster hyperdrive. What's more, any escort fleet alongside the Bellator will be able to respond more rapidly as well. So you have the power of a Super Star Destroyer, but in a ship that's much more well suited to responding to things like hit and run attacks. This nimble design actually helps to neutralize some of the weaknesses of the Super Star Destroyer design generally. All Super Star Destroyers have blind spots, especially near the engines or away from the flanks. The Bellator is able to more easily move to ensure that it could deliver full firepower to its enemies because of its extra speed and maneuverability. It can also close the gap on enemies outside of firing range, but was still effective against large, tough ships. As long as it could survive the opening volleys of turbolaser fire, a Bellator could maneuver into vulnerable locations, where even its lesser firepower and armor would have the advantage. The somewhat smaller profile of the dreadnought also helped to manage the vulnerability of the overexposed bridge, common among Super Star Destroyers. What's more, there also appears to be redundant shield or sensor bulbs in heavily fortified locations, protected by what looks like turbolasers. I also note the lack of any large cityscape or trench-style superstructure features, which is great, as Rebel pilots were known to take advantage of those. The Bellator also has a somewhat unique weapon placement. Like the Imperial Star Destroyer, each side of the main superstructure is lined with major turbolaser batteries. However, the outer main guns are placed in groups, rather than randomly scattered across the ship, as we see with something like the Executor. I think it's likely that these guns are fire-linked, allowing the efficient targeting of many smaller ships at once. We also see Allegiant-style main weapon pods running down the vessel's central seam, which I really like, as those guns have incredible firing arcs, as do many of the guns on the superstructure's forward ridge. Unlike with larger SSD models, the rim guns are also exposed, giving them greater range of motion, especially given their ball style. Finally, along the edge of the ship, we can see what appears to be clusters of torpedo launchers and perhaps point defense cannons, adding extra versatility. All in all, the Bellator is an interesting and I would argue very effective combination of speed, good weapon placement, and the minimization of classic Imperial design flaws. But the ship also has an interesting out-of-universe backstory. In the old Star Wars EU, two of the best sources of lore for Imperial capital ships were the Dark Empire comic series, plus its associated sourcebook, and the Essential Guide to Warfare. The Essential Guide to Warfare provided incredible backstories for dozens of different ship types, creating new classes, providing official images for the first time, and laying out the history of Imperial starships. The Dark Empire series, on the other hand, presented many images of far-off capital ships, which writers often retconned to show the Empire's use of Super Star Destroyers. For example, we have what appears to be Vengeance dreadnoughts, tying the lore in nicely with Dark Forces 2. One of the most notable of these ship types, due to its striking design, was what would later become the Bellator. Seeing this ship, well-known 3D modeler Fractal Sponge created a fully realized version, the image of the Bellator that we would come to know and love. Now, back to the Essential Guide to Warfare. Although the ship itself was not named, Fractal Sponge's design for the vessel was canonized and added into several pictures. The name itself, however, was not mentioned, making the ship's canon status unclear. Still, at least 4 images were including 2 where it's refueling along with other dreadnoughts, a 3rd where it's seen in formation, and 1 where the ship type is strangely part of a rebel fleet during the Thrawn crisis. The confusion was worsened due to the fact that the book makes several references to humped-back Mandator 3s as part of the Dark Empire's fleet, leaving some to wonder whether the Mandator 3 was actually the ship seen in the BIS defense fleet. Jason Fry rectified this through the later publishing of the book's endnotes. He made the Bellator and Mandator divergent designs within the same family, with the following quote: "The Bellator sacrifices firepower for speed, where the Mandator 3 is a 12-kilometer monster valued as a hulking weapons platform. So you have divergent, differently sized redesigns of the same basic hull. That's in-universe. Out-of-universe, Warfare's text and art had separate references to the famous humped-back ship seen above BIS in Dark Empire. From that accidental collision, a design retcon." So there you have it. And if this out-of-universe stuff is interesting, I highly recommend you pick up the Essential Guide to Warfare. This is especially if you like Fractal Sponge's models. Some of them were canonized within the book, like his model for the Allegiance or his outright creation of the Secutor. But more about all that on a different day, and links to everything, including Fractal Sponge's websites, where you can check out all of these models for free, down in the description. Anyway guys, this has been EckhartsLadder. Until next time, may the Force be with you.